we'll talk about something that was announced in the last couple of weeks, but we've known about it for a while. It's this concept of a Nations Cup or World League or whatever actual branding they're going to end up putting on it. It was pretty much a worst kept secret kind of situation because it was leaked a long time ago. And this notion of the top 12 countries, or the two big competitions, and then two more teams to be named later, and then 12, and then it's kind of ring fenced, and then there's going to be the next 12 and another competition, and it's on a 2-year cycle kind of thing. And it was just, it just seems a bit clunky, whatever, but it seemed to be modeling on the UEFA Nations League. I mean, need I ask, but what do you make of it, Francisco, from the Portuguese standpoint?
Well, you have been following me for quite a while. I know Richard also shared a follow, and I gave it back. And you know my position about the World League or the Nations Cup, whatever you want to call it. I'm totally against this model. I was only in favor for a wider model that brought tier two. I'm trying to take down the tier two nomenclature and go for emerging nations or nations that are on progress to become big, and with the top sides, and that would work for me. Like 2-3 matches a year, it's not enough, but it would suffice for a first phase. But this completely throws out of the window the thing we would like to call the big top guys, the rugby values, because ring fencing, it goes against any sports or life values. This is discrimination in sports, because you're building walls around what are the nations you think should be with you. And I know Japan and Fiji are on those 12 nations, but I know for sure that they don't feel part of those 12 nations, because at any given day, the other 10 can do like this and kick them out and send them to the other 12. So and this could bring some wrongdoing to the game. We have seen that for growth, you can't block the other teams for getting higher. And if you can go, and this is not, I'm not marketing or doing publicizing job of what I did today. It was a data interview with Simon Haiwalui from Fiji, and he said we want more games, so we need more games against the top teams. That's the only way we're going to improve. Even if we lose by 30 points, 40 points, I can assure you that one day we're going to win. And Fiji won against Australia. It was very close against winning against Wales. But let's not forget, they won against England on the summer. So it was not that long ago. And Portugal was very close on winning against Wales and Australia for me. I saw the match and I know exactly what happened. So the problem is, if you don't care, even if Portugal plays with Samoa and Tonga and Namibia and Uruguay and Chile more often, so let's say 5 games, 6 games a year plus the Rugby Europe Championship, it's good. But when I face an Ireland that plays 2 levels above mine, especially conditioning wise, intense physicality, or not even physicality, but let's say so conditioning, stamina, and the set piece. What can I do? I can't do anything, because if I play once every 4 years against a team like Ireland or South Africa or New Zealand, I won't grow. I won't learn anything. So I think that's a big problem, and the vital thing to understand. I know why did you do this decision, and I've like 2 months before it, I told everyone the World Cup is going to be expanded, but we're going to get the World League, because I think this was like saying, okay, you want more teams in the World Cup, okay, but then we're going to get what you want, we want, and that's up to it. And sorry for the monologue, just to explain, because the position of Georgia was badly understood. It was not badly understood. I think people are attacking them, and there's fair criticism about the position of the CEO and the union, but they are at the same point. You cannot blame them to think that the other nations, the top nations, will deliver what they're promising them, which are just U18 and U20 games to be part of the Six Nations. But I think that's completely unreal. even if it was the thing that you bought from to give a vote, it's just wrong, because you're trading something for something so little, and at any given time they can just cut and say, okay, the 7 nations with you didn't work, so we're going back to 6 nations, so goodbye and ciao ciao. And I think the problem with the emerging nations is that they don't unify. There's no unity with them, or most with them, and that's going to be always a problem. And that is due because they are not professional sides, not the teams, the players, or the coaches. The structure. The structure is not professional. Wise. They don't think as as a pro structure. They just think year by year, and that doesn't help things, and let the other guys do whatever they want at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean it's a political kind of decision as well within the within World Rugby, because it's the way it's set up. I read someone that did an article on how the voting actually was structured, but it was kind of always done in such a way that the top nations were going to have still all the power in the new competition, despite, you'd say the mandate of an organization called World Rugby would be to spread rugby around the world as much as they can. But we've got these, and then of course there's the dynamic of this heavy investment of CVC into the game, and they're going to be looking for as many marquee matchups as they can possibly get, and so to get a return on their investment. And then of course we've got this whole thing, this ring fencing. They're saying that it's going to apply till 2030, but who's to say they're not going to make another change in 2030? I don't really think there's any guarantee that that's not going to happen. And in the meantime, like you say, you've got Portugal, who have shown that they can compete so well in a pool with the likes of Wales, Australia, and Fiji, big nations, and Georgia. They're not going to play those teams. Well, they're not going to play the Wales and the Australians and the Fijis unless they get drawn against them in the next World Cup. And in the meantime, they'll be playing at their own level. And then how are they expected to get to grow without that? Would you, if they had done exactly what, if it was exactly the same setup, with the top tier and the lower tier as they have it now, but there was relegation beginning in 2076. So you knew that Portugal were going to go into a competition with at least the prospect of maybe advancing and having a chance. Would that have made a difference to you, or did it need a whole different outlook?
It wouldn't make a difference for me. I get the promotion relegation thing, but it's just one team that goes up and one team that goes down. So there's 11 teams that will sit on a bench looking to the others, and this promotion and relegation stuff is a lie, because it's a playoff game. It's not direct relegation. So let's imagine that Scotland or Japan or England finish it at 12 by 2032, because it's not in 2030, it's 2032, because
it only starts in 2030. Yeah.
Exactly. And imagine England fish at last. They won't go down. They go to a playoff with the team that finished first. So there's the team that wins the second division, let's call it like it is, won't have any prizes, because at the end of the day, if they lose against the bottom team, the team on the bottom, it's over. Okay, 2 more years and 2 more years, and it piles up and piles up. And the quickest way is to say to these people, do you like David Niniashvili and Storti and Nicolas Martins and so on? I'll tell you, by 2032, Storti will be 32 years old. Niniashvili will be 31. Martins will be 35. So, and they will have played against the top teams or the most historical sides, whatever you want to call, or the favorites to win a World Cup 2 times, 3 times in their life. And I've heard a lot of arguments. Oh, in the Lions year, you'll play against them. It's bollocks. I know how this is playing. This is simply to explain. There's 10 guys that want to share the money between themselves. No, they don't want to share with anyone else, and they're blocking it. This is simple. This is exactly what they did with the Six Nations. It's theirs. I have no problem, and I have a lot of discussions with the Tier 2 account on Twitter. I have no problem with the Six Nations. I have zero problem. It's a private tournament. They built it. It's theirs. Marketing. They sold their stocks and share. Each team has a share with CVC, so it's seven stakeholders. And for Georgia, Portugal, Spain, or whatever, they should to go there. They have to leave the Rugby Europe competitions and buy a share from and get a share for them and buy it. Do you think that England or Wales are going to get will give or any of the Six Nations teams going to give 4% or 3% of their share to bring a new guy in, and they're going to win a bit less money? Of course they won't, because this is not how our sport is structured. We have an elite that wants to remain an elite, and I'm not talking about the teams or the players. I'm talking about the guys who are in the unions. And sorry for this. I'm talking a bit quick, and this couldn't be here a rant, but it's not a rant. It's how the thing is managed. We talk about football, and football has a lot of corruption. We can't lie about it. But at the end of the day, everyone plays against everyone. I've put a list. Cristiano Ronaldo may be the biggest idiot, and I won't say a swear word here, but he played against Finland, Saudi Arabia, Ecuador, and so on. Do you have how many times Johnny Sexton played outside of the World Cup against Uruguay or Chile or Portugal? How many times? How many times did I got to see Bilden Barrett, who's my favorite player of all time, play against Uruguay, Spain? How many times? Zero. And this is the problem with rugby. We are marketing a product that every time goes a World Cup, it's a global sport. It is. But after the World Cup, it stops being global. And that's the thing. We have a massive problem. And I've said this once. We are going to go bankrupt these smaller unions one day, but believe we're gonna when we go, you all go, and we all go bankrupt. And at the end of the day, the guys who were at the boards, we're gonna live to their good houses and good mansions and good cars, and they'll care less. There are just so few guys at the boards that really care with the game, and that's the thing that worries me. You can do as look. I'm not a communist. I'm not saying you can't be rich. You can be rich, but don't trample other people to be rich. Just that. It's so simple. And we look, just to finish. If they could put every player playing 50 test games a year to make more money, they would. But as science progression is going is growing, and social media exists, they can't allow themselves to be exposed as bad employers, so they won't do it. But with the rest, well, there's a council that New Zealand has 10 votes, while Georgia has 1 vote. Why is Georgia different from New Zealand at the World Rugby Council? What's the difference? Can anybody explain?
No, it's true. And how many votes does Gibraltar have there, Rich?
None, because we're not allowed to join for political reasons. So, World Rugby, Rugby Europe, all these people sitting in their ivory towers and all their mansions, as Francisco has just mentioned, it's implicit, it's intrinsically corrupt and protectionist. Everything that Francisco has said resonates with me. It's the Six Nations will never, and they are a separate entity, as indeed are the Rugby Championship. So, but World Rugby cannot then profess to be this inclusive organization. They are not. They're the least inclusive, most xenophobic bunch of people you will ever come across. We complain about football, rightly so in many instances, about the corruption and about, we're as rugby fans, we're forever taking the mick out of football and all the antics that you see all the players, and quite rightly too. And indeed, only the other day, somebody commented to me on social media, a guy who doesn't follow rugby, and how incredibly impressed he was with the respect shown to opposition players and to the officiating teams. And yes, we get that very well, and we do that very well. But when it comes to actually growing the sport, we're absolutely rubbish. Unless I say we, I mean, World Rugby is absolutely rubbish. And they're rubbish on purpose because they don't want to lose out on what is an old boys club. And you know, rugby started off as being an old boys club and an elitist sport. And in the mentality of the people who run the game, that has not changed. Despite the fact that the vast majority of the players nowadays, including in the top tier nations, are not that type of individual, you know? So, you know, it's Francisco just mentioned just in his brief there about Johnny Sexton never having played Uruguay. Well, he may have played Uruguay, but certainly not outside the confines of a World Cup. Whereas Ronaldo, Messi, and any other top footballer you want to mention will have regularly played. Gibraltar plays against the world champions France in football. It took us 25 years to get into UEFA and FIFA, and we had to go to the court of to the court of arbitration to get in, and basically the court of arbitration forced FIFA and UEFA to accept us. You know, in rugby, no, it doesn't. No, you know, you talk about inclusivity and all this stuff. You know, I'll quote Francisco here: bollocks, absolute bollocks.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't, and you know, and what they do to the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and whatever else you want nations is ridiculous. Even you know, even this promotion relegation, which isn't, it's just a little veneer on the wood. As soon as you scratch a little bit, you see that it's all rubbish. What they're doing is just political correctness, and that's all they're doing. Because don't forget that those 12 nations are going to be playing, even the two who are potentially going to be, one of the two are potentially going to be relegated, whether that's Fiji or Japan, whoever it is. They're going to have been playing up until 2030 against top tier nations. So the level of rugby that they will have been playing, when you compare that to the people that Portugal, Spain, Romania, and everybody else plays, you know, it's going to be, again, this differentiation of skill levels and money and everything else is going to be huge between they haven't resolved anything, nothing. They really haven't.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean we talk about football, and you know, we've seen all that's been going on about football. There was this talk of a super league competition and teams breaking away, and that was kind of the worst possible thing that could happen. And eventually there was enough of an outcry that it didn't. But when it comes to rugby, I mean, even before this, we already had a super league. You know, I mean, we've had it all the time. Those elite teams just kicking the trapdoor shut behind them. That's been there for years already, and it's almost impossible for teams to progress. And I think probably the most frustrating aspect of what's happening now is the fact that they've been talking about this global calendar for many years. I mean, since probably even before the last World Cup, they've been talking about doing this. And then when they finally go announce it, they not only seem to get it wrong, but they've got it wrong for so far ahead. Do you know what I mean? Like Francisco said, it's 2032 before they'll actually be promoted to relegation. There'll be two World Cups before that happens.
If they'd been serious about the tier 2 and tier 3 nations, what they should have done is forced, and you know, World Rugby is the governing body. They can force nations and unions. What they should have done is they should have forced all the top tier nations to play Portugal, Spain, Romania, and whoever else, Georgia, every single year. So each of the nations gets to play Portugal every single year. But Scotland play Portugal in the same year, Ireland play Portugal in the same year, England play Portugal in that same year. So Portugal gets exposed to a test series against 2 or 3 of the top tier nations every single year. And if those top tier nations wish to use their emerging players, well, Portugal, Spain, Romania, etc., will still be playing against players who are at a higher level than their own, and therefore learning. That's if World Rugby had been serious about this. But of course, they're not. They're just interested in their own.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there wasn't options for them. I mean, like say for just off the top of my head, like instead of this World League idea, imagine for a 4-week cycle, say in November, that instead of playing matches in this competition, whatever, say you had a 4-team group with maybe 2 tier 1 and then a tier 2 and maybe a tier 3 or 2 tier 2s, and have a round robin competition over the 3 weeks.
Yes.
So, and then in the last week, maybe have the 2 tier 1s play each other, and then have a final for the top 2. So they'll get their 2. They, assuming they finish 1 and 2, they'll get their 2 big tests at the end, but they'll have still managed to play a Portugal or play a Georgia or whatever in the process, and they'll have been involved. And who knows, they might even do an upset and get into the final. But there are ways they could have done it without this model. But you have to wonder, I mean, how much of an influence is the investment? We knew when this was coming down the line, massive investment from the outside, a lot of money coming in, and they're going to want to dictate what they want to do with it. So it's I suppose there's not a lot to say in what's gone on. Do you have anything more to say, Francisco?
Look, there's so much more to say. We could spend like 2 hours talking about this, and new ideas and new arguments could come up. Look, CVC can do whatever they want. Every time they put their paws in a sport, they almost kill it. Look the story of Formula One. I think almost 10 years with Formula One, and they almost killed it. Just that they just killed it because they turned something was a global motorsport to something of a niche. They wanted to elitize everything, even their fans, which is I was going to say a very bad word. It was the stupidest idea ever. And when the CVC left Formula One and left in a bad state, the new guys came in, pick it up, glued everything together, and changed their way of thinking and so on. And now you have Formula One making a huge comeback at all levels. And my problem is the CVC came to rugby because they know the guys that are on the top are, I won't say weak because I want to have respect them as people, but they're easily manipulated to work for just for the money and just for a few games. This World League stuff is just a World Cup with 12 teams. That's what they wanted. And I can assure you that at the end of the day, the pressure is going to be on the fans. If you don't like this World League stuff, just after starting 2026, don't watch it. Just don't watch it. Don't buy marketing. Don't buy anything. Six Nations, you can watch it, whatever you want. But the World League stuff, you have to boycott it. And you have to boycott it like hard. But the rugby community is not as many or as vocal as football. When they tried to do the Super League in football, I think what crumbled everything was UEFA and FIFA saying no. Better not do this because 99% of the people are completely against it. And these people are going to go against the investors. So the sponsors and so on. And the sponsors don't want to be on the side of a Super League that is going to be toxic. So look, if McDonald's supported the Super League, I can assure you for the first 3 or 4 months, nobody would put a foot inside McDonald's. More, they would vandalize McDonald's. And they know, okay, 4 months of losses, it's not recoverable. After COVID, it's impossible. We cannot lose money. So we won't go with the Super League. But in rugby, as it's a smaller sport, and it is a smaller sport in terms of the quantity of fans, I think the global outcry was good. It was better than I expected, and I think most of the fans are against it. But you have now to be against it by not watching, not covering, doing whatever. This year I made a very difficult decision when the World Cup, the men's football World Cup happened in Qatar. I said the websites that I'm a chief editor won't cover it. They won't cover it, and I don't care if we lose money. And we had a lot of companies trying to pay us to put ads and sponsor articles about the World Cup. I said, no World Cup article. It's done. We want it. And if it goes to Saudi Arabia in 2031, I won't share content. These countries need to normalize and democratize. But before that, and before we give them our hand, they have to stop with the shenanigans of being xenophobic, homophobic, and whatever other phobic thing they are. And maybe this is the problem. We are going to, our back is so soft that we're going to say yes to everybody, be it a bad person or a good person. And that's my problem. At the end of the day, we are in a bad spot after an incredible. The saddest thing is this: we are in a very bad spot after a Super World Cup. It was just my first World Cup, a serious one, was in 2007. I never seen a World Cup like this, and we were blocked for having content creators doing stuff like they did in 2019, and it was big. I spoke with a lot of people that was in the 1987 World Cup in New Zealand, and they said this was the best World Cup of my life. And now we're going with this. We're going with completely bonkers idea that I don't know where we're heading. Just to finish things off, and I wrote this in a thread. I was with a big company in Portugal. They have, I'm going to put like this easy. They have a lot of money. They have like almost billions. They work all over Europe, and we were talking about rugby, and they're saying, well, we were thinking maybe to sponsor, maybe not the union, but some Portuguese players, so they can go abroad, or we can protect them, or some other stuff. But with this World League stuff, the investments just doesn't feel right, because we're going to lose money, because we won't your team was not going to play against Wales, or against New Zealand, or against Australia. So we can't allow ourselves to lose money with this. What I can say to an investor like this,
Yeah.
with all honesty, I can't say anything. It's impossible to say anything, because there's no counter argument that I have. Okay, Portugal Samoa is a great game. Yes, definitely. But how many people are going to watch Portugal Samoa if it's in a close competition? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. And another thing that people should focus on, while the top World League is worked on by those 10, 12 unions, ours is going to be World Rugby. And I've seen how World Rugby lately works on their competitions. The seventh Challenger Series is completely over. It's been bad. The streaming is just awful, and I don't. They do the best, but there's no money, or the unions that organize it are not well funded unions. The Rugby World Cup U20s or trophy is just you have some highlights, the games, and nothing else. So how can and let's not talk about the women's parts of the game.
Oh God, we could do a whole day's worth of talk on that.
So how can I be completely rest assured that World Rugby will do fine with those 12 unions?
Yeah.
Well, because at the end of the day, I'm going to say this, and I know Richard, because of Gibraltar, is a very complicated situation with Rugby Europe. But Rugby Europe does a hell of a job working by streaming games and giving data. We give everything to the public. We even do a predictor and some other things, and we have like 80 less funding than World Rugby. So I don't get what they do on those tournaments. I just don't get it's unexplainable, and I'm afraid what happens in the future.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of brave decisions down the line when it comes to like supporting this competition. When it does finally come around, I mean, like you say, it's probably going to look for probably separate sponsorship as well. So you know, we'll see what happens there, and just how the public. And I think it's probably important for the fans of those top nations to be heavily involved in any kind of situation where, kind of demanding that there is more of a chance, because they really, I mean, they basically set themselves up, and it's always been this way. They're turkeys who aren't going to vote for Christmas, and that's how it's been structured all this time, and they still have that power, and I think they've even increased that power now with this setup. But we're just going to have to see what happens, and hope they can find a solution, because I mean, countries like Portugal and Georgia, for all they showed at this World Cup, which is supposed to showcase the sport itself and how it's looking, and it looked good in many ways, especially with Portugal, an example of that. Nothing's gonna change over the next 4 years, and then we're gonna see what happens with Portugal. And it's like, well, geez, what have they been doing for the past 4 years? And that's how it's gonna look. And they didn't have the opportunity, but sure, hopefully something will happen